Yardley is a suburb of Birmingham. Located to the southeast of the city centre, it has a long history dating back to the Anglo-Saxon period and has been a thriving community for centuries. Today, Yardley is a diverse modern suburb of Birmingham. It is home to a number of historical landmarks, including the medieval St Edburgha's Church and the Yardley Old Grammar School, which dates back to the 13th century, and the popular Blakesley Hall Museum, built in 1590, a Grade II listed Tudor building. One space, the Barrow Lane Sports Field, which has 2 football fields and a community sports hall, are at the heart of a struggle that has the community up in arms.
On the 14th of April 1954, a very important ceremony was conducted on this land, and this was by the Reverend Crowson, who was the vicar of Yardley at that time, and also president was the cooperative's president himself, Mr Ravenshill. Now, this was to acknowledge the 120 cooperative employees who had lost their lives during World War II. On that day, a very important plaque was presented, and it was actually put on gates which the cooperative employees had actually paid for. And it's really sad that some years later, it's about 30 years later, these gates were knocked down and the plaque was, would you believe, thrown into a skip.
The plaque was placed in St Edburgha's Church in a rededication service carried out by the Reverend William Sands on May the 28th, 2014. In the 1920s, the land was sold to the Birmingham Cooperative by the Barrows family. This was under a covenant to ensure the land would always be used to benefit the local community. Despite the schedule of restricted covenant, in 2013, the Co-op decided to put the land up for sale. Since 2015, the fields have been locked off to the public.
We've got sports organisations, sports clubs who actually want to participate and run football activities here. And it's all about bringing the partnerships together. And if we take away these resources, the biggest concern for me is, and what else is there for the local young people to do?
The local community were quick to act, setting up the Yardley Community Protection Society, with key residents and Faye Goodman championing the cause.
Today is the 3rd of March 2016. It's a big day because the planning committee are going to be deciding whether or not to go ahead with the planning application by the Cooperative Society.
If they appeal the decision, we could find ourselves in another battle. Or if they withdraw, they could reassess their application and come back quite quickly.
The community won the day and the developer walked away. The land was saved, or so they thought.
Things we do to save our land.
People have great respect for the Co-op and the way that they've always been a part of the community, including here and elsewhere. But maybe those are bygone ages now. Perhaps this is the terrible age we're living in. Whereas, I say, lots of companies, large companies, wealthy companies, just do not want to be bothered with sports grounds and social clubs for the people who work for them, let alone the residents around. And it is a great sadness that we're losing these places now.
I feel quite sad specifically because this is Co-op land. My nana, had a divvy number and we'd all go down to the Co-op. When my mum died, when my nan died, they both insisted that after they died that they were to be buried by the Co-op. The Co-op is in the veins of the people in Yardley, and it is an ethical company, and we want to make sure that it's seen like that. In Birmingham, we have an amazing history of ethical capitalism through people like the Co-op, but Cadbury's, the Barrow Cadbury Trust, all of those institutions that made sure that when they had their businesses and made money and nobody minded that they looked after the areas.
This area is right on the edge of Old Yardley, which is one of the oldest conservation areas in Birmingham. I just don't think we have the infrastructure for another possibly 200 cars making something like 1,000 journeys estimated a day. And then families that might be, 200 to 300 people wanting school places, doctors, dentists' appointments. We just don't have the infrastructure for a development of this size in this place in Yardley.
Back in 2015, local sports clubs were deliberately dissuaded, even barred, from using these magnificent fields.
I've emailed them many times just to get no response whatsoever, and they haven't really gone out to the community and put their case. I think they had a little try at first and they didn't like it because they weren't getting their own way, and from there they seem to have just shut up shop and put the barricades up, and that was it.
Sport for Life, they were people that were looking after this. We made the phone call. We was on the phone for over an hour and a half just before Christmas. They said that they'd put an email out to all the local clubs. We never received the email because otherwise we'd have jumped on this straight away. They actually told us over the phone, there's no point, we can't give you the pictures because it's been done and dusted.
6 years later, Persimmons stepped in and a new battle commenced.
We know there's enough brownfield sites, not just in the Midlands but nationally, to accommodate our housing shortage.
Oxfam and the CoOp came together first in Birmingham, and a series of fundraising activities was planned. The first of these was a girls' football match. These two teams are from Sparkhill and Yardley Co-op societies. Sparkhill are in the stripes, and Yardley are wearing a fetching ensemble of dark blue. Final score, 5-0 to Yardley. These girls take their football seriously, and they play to win.
So with the Lionesses winning the Euros, you're probably going to start seeing a lot more investment in the women's game. Barrows Lane, it's a fantastic facility, and you know, hopefully as a community we can get together and we can do something with it.
So Barrows Lane is the perfect example. You've got a fantastic facility there that can be utilised and used by hundreds, if not thousands of people on a weekly basis.
Many clubs have tried to rent these grounds and have been refused by the CoOp. They've come to us, haven't they, and said, we've tried to get a ground there, we want to pay rent, we want to look after it, we'll cut the grass and use the ground for its original purpose, which is sport.
The Football Association deemed the football pitches unsuitable for sports. The FA never made any such statement.
Simmons were quite underhand in saying that the FA had said X, Y and Z about the pitches. It turns out it was never the FA, it was the Ground Maintenance Association, and they said it was not used and eventually would become unplayable.
Their proposed state-of-the-art sports facility is not in Yardley, but in a completely different parliamentary ward, Bawdsley Green, at Waverley Studio College.
If it's been invested in Bawdsley Green, actually, it's no use, realistically, to the residents of Stretchford and Yardley North.
There seems to be so much wasteland available around, especially the Birmingham area, that could be utilised and developed upon. So I don't understand why it's always the sports facilities or the football pitches or the rugby pitches that are the targets that are getting chosen to be developed, in all honesty with you.
It's so important when we're talking in Parliament every week about childhood obesity that children in Birmingham Yardley, young people in Birmingham Yardley and adults who use the sites have somewhere to go and exercise.
It's a crying shame, there's nowhere for them to play football now really. I mean we train on a public park when we can. All the places that you could bring a lot of teams and a lot of kids to come have just been turned into houses, and it's, you know, the kids are sitting in their houses playing Xboxes, getting unhealthy, not wanting to join in team activity and just learning social skills really.
Slowly but surely, yeah, the clubs will just fold because there's nowhere for us to play. It's becoming too expensive. Councils are charging sky-high rents.
I think that it's a great opportunity for kids to come out and have a go at the sport. It also stops kids from going on their Xbox every day, and they enjoy it, so it's good for the kids.
And I just feel very strongly and quite passionate about trying to save these open areas. I mean, I had a wonderful childhood. I had lots of open space, Greenland, all sorts of outdoor activities. You know, you've got obesity, which is, you know, on the rise. So on one hand, you want to try and promote that, but on the other hand, you're cutting the very space that these children, you know, thrive. You know, it's a bit of a shame, really.
Save these football pitches! Save these football pitches!
The community have successfully achieved cross-party support, objecting to this planning proposal. This includes West Midlands Mayor Andy Street, who strongly supports using brownfield sites.
Now, no one's denying we need housing across the West Midlands, and indeed we're getting on and we're hitting our housing target numbers. But the question is, where should we build our housing? And my argument properties that we should be using. Brownfield sites, bringing them back to life for new housing. And we must protect at all costs the precious green spaces, particularly in our urban areas.
We have a real problem with builders in this country, whether they're small or large. They see a bit of land and they're thinking, great, we can make a nice big fat profit on this one, and they go in and concrete it. Now, if they can sneak in and do it, they will, or if they have to have a long drawn-out fight like what we've got for eight years, they will still try and get that land, regardless of all the residents being up in arms and worried about our health and well-being and wanting a multi-sports centre. No, they don't care about that.
Persimmons Homes were voted Britain's worst builder 4 years running. Why did the seemingly ethical Central England Co-op even engage them? They have been fined for destroying rare habitats, trees and causing pollution, plus the devastation and trails of disaster they have left to homeowners. The fields and surrounding habitat are also home to protected species such as hedgehogs, bats and slowworms. Indeed, slowworms are Britain's most unusual lizard, so it is illegal to intentionally kill or injure slowworms under the Countryside Act of 1981.
We're supposed to be protecting our green spaces, not only for the health and well-being of our citizens, but also for nature and biodiversity and combating climate change. There's plenty of brownfield sites in Birmingham to build houses on. We do not need to be concreting over our green spaces.
And bear in mind that's on top of the Commonwealth Games, and the legacy of the Commonwealth Games is community and sport together. So where is the help from everybody? We are asking now for help because we've been advised that the Commonwealth Games have £60 million left, which is going into a charity to deliver to communities. Well, what better charity than to save these magnificent fields for sport and the community, which is the whole purpose of the legacy in the first place.
Keeping these fields is hugely important to the people who live in and around the area. The concern is that what is happening here is a reflection of a much bigger problem sweeping across the entire UK.
And now you've had a good look round the site, guided by the local group, and I'd simply put this question to you. What do you think should happen here? Should there be housing, or should this be restored as a community facility with playing fields?
A lovely woman who told me she was a co-op employee and that as part of her wages were docked and she paid a dividend towards the building of the social club, and now that is going to be knocked down. She was saying, nobody's asked me, I think I own that, I paid for it. And I think that just shows when people do something amazing. It's terribly socialist that people built this. This was a municipal thing, and it just seems at the moment the same people who built it, the same neighbourhoods who've used it aren't being listened to, and I really, really hope that the right thing happens and that we're able to retain the site.
So many communities wanting to save their green spaces for a number of reasons, primarily, maybe for recreation. Some want to keep the sports field for the football or rugby or whatever. And they can't seem to stop big builders coming in and just taking the land, even though they fight hard. I mean, we've been fighting for 8 years, and yet still we've got to fight. The planning application has gone in. We've been told, it's going to be really difficult because, they've got the money and we haven't. But what we have got, we've got passion, we've got heart, and we've got truth on our side. Now, if we're so brazen as to think, it doesn't matter, one field can go, we've got plenty of other fields, it doesn't work that way. It's not just for us today, it's for future generations of children. But money talks too much. It's got too big a voice, so we have got to get our voice out there, and we've got to fight. And honestly, I'm so determined we're going to try and win this fight. If we don't, then be it on the head of the government and those that make these decisions, because the legal system is not working. We are not stopping rogue builders, greedy builders from coming in, making a nice big fat profit at the expense of a community, the lives of ourselves and our children and the future generations.